There is a few things I've noticed recently in this country regarding what I think, unfortunately, is a deepening polarisation around the Brexit situation. And this is kind of the British equivalent of the divisions that seem to be rising in the United States. In the US, it's whether you're Trump or anti-Trump. Pro-Trump or anti-Trump. In the UK, it's getting to a situation where it's leave or remain. People are becoming tribalized, and it's becoming, I think, just the situation's getting more and more polarized. Now, this is not to say, focusing on this country, it's not to say that every leave person and every remain person hates the other side. Of course not. I suspect the majority of people don't. The problem is those who are very vocal about it are being very vocal about it on both sides. I came across a video which is a stark reminder of this. There was the pro-Remain people demonstrating outside Parliament. They had the European Union flags and they were there demonstrating. Now, they were being peaceful, they weren't being aggressive, they were demonstrating. I'll come to whether people think that's justified or not, but the point is, in a democracy, you have a right to peaceful protest, or peaceful demonstration. That is a fundamental right of democracy. Anyway, this guy decided to walk past and he started ranting at them. Clearly, he was a leaver. He started ranting at them, and this wasn't just a case of being angry that he saw the EU flags. He was really getting in their face and getting very personal. He was calling the men there cuckolds. He was saying they're selling out to an EU dictatorship. He was ranting and raving. He was threatening violence. This thug was threatening violence. Now, what I found disturbing was not so much that this had happened. By the way, the people didn't retaliate at all. They kind of laughed it off. And they filmed it a bit, hopefully for evidence to show the police. Personally, I hope the police charge this guy with making violent threats. Um, okay, he might not have been serious. It might have been hot air. But there has to be, people have to face consequences if they go around threatening strangers. No matter how strongly you feel about something, to go around threatening violence against strangers is just not acceptable. I felt very angry at times. There's times, I've probably wanted to confront someone in that way, but if I did and I threatened someone, I would have to take the consequences. We all get angry about things, but there is absolutely no excuse for the disgusting way this guy was behaving. He was basically behaving like a loudmouth thug, and I hope that reasonable leave people, if they come across that video, would just outright, without caveat, condemn it. No ifs, buts, or maybes. Just do the decent thing and condemn it. Okay. This wasn't just like, oh, I don't like what you're doing, or accept the referendum or something like that. He was actually threatening these people. So I think he should be charged personally. If for no other reason, then there needs to be a message sent out that people can't behave this way. And I apply this to both sides. Not long ago, I saw some right wing activists. I don't know if they were UKIP or they were, I can't recall exactly, but they were going into a local election somewhere in London. Don't quote me on this. It may have been somewhere in Wandsworth. I can't remember exactly, but there was a bunch of far left activists outside yelling fascist and racist and getting right into their face. Just as ugly, just as wrong. So this seems to be on the increase. You get the far right and the far left are both being galvanized. Now, as far as I'm concerned, this jackass who was squaring up to the demonstrators in London, um, he was behaving like a thug, okay? Um, and there's people on the far left who also behave like thugs. And I don't use the word thug lightly. In my opinion, a thug is someone who makes violent threats against strangers without good cause, without any sort of self protection, rationale, or anything like that, just violently threatens people. That is a characteristic of a thug. So I hope this guy gets charged. I hope he gets exposed and the shame forces him to, make a groveling apology because that sort of behavior should not be acceptable. If he doesn't like their demonstration, then he has a choice. He can hold a counter demonstration, or he can confront them in a civil manner. Ask some questions. Say, well, why are you doing this? Why don't you accept the result? Whatever he wants to say. But violently threatening them. Anyway, what I found disturbing was the page where this had been linked from. I think it was Breaking Brexit News. I think that was the name of it. The number of comments that were calling this guy a hero, and oh, I agree with this man, and that man speaks the truth, etc. If you're defending him, you're just as bad as him. And I was shocked at the sheer number of people who were lining up to defend this guy. Now, I've always said it's wrong to generalize leavers, and I hope that reasonable people who voted leave can see that this sort of behaviour is unacceptable. I voted Remain, and I absolutely unequivocally condemn people on the hard left or Remainers, and it isn't exactly the same thing. There's centrists like myself who voted Remain, but Remainers who behave in that sort of manner, it's also wrong. Okay, so I'm no hypocrite. I hold consistent standards to this. Whether you leave or remain, you're responsible for your behaviour. And I know feelings are running high, but since I'm on this subject, there are a few issues I want to bring with the leave side. I'm not going to pretend I'm absolutely neutral. I'm not. I am fair in terms of where I apply standards of behaviour, but I'm not going to pretend I'm neutral in terms of my opinion on this. I think Brexit overall, I cannot see much good coming from it. Occasionally, there's a scattering of good news like that BAE contract with Australia. I welcome that. I will welcome any good news, but I am struggling to see good news. Um, since June 2016, as far as I'm concerned, all we have seen really is division, deepening division, um, rising tensions between Brussels and Westminster, and an increasingly complex situation. The Prime Minister is absolutely embattled. She has backbenchers lining up to stab her in the back, constantly questioning how long she'll be in office. I don't see what that achieves. I'm not even a conservative, but I don't see what that achieves. All it does is weaken her position. Um, I'm tempted to say the whole thing is a mess, but I'm aware that might be too cynical. Now, there's a few Leave positions I want to challenge. Leavers often say the Remain side is too negative and too cynical, but and I would concede that sometimes there are some people on the Remain side that are doom mongers. They won't welcome any good news and they almost want Brexit to be a failure. To those people, I say you're not helping anyone and you're certainly not caring about this country. And all you are doing is galvanizing those who say that, the Remainers don't care about this country. I do think that when people hold up the EU flag, that's fine, but there's nothing wrong with holding a British flag next to it, as some Remainers do. But when you're flying just the EU flag, it does send out the wrong message. It sends out the message that your loyalties are to the EU first and the UK second. That sends out the wrong message. I saw one or two Leave people on that video thread earlier say that this Fug's behaviour gave a bad image to Leavers because it casts a stereotype that they're all unthinking thugs, which of course is not true. But the point here is if you don't like I'm a Remainer and I don't like some of the perceptions that Remainers get, such as liberal elites, communists as being one of them, which is absurd, and other such smears. And I can complain about that, and I do, but I also have to see where it comes from. There are certain Remainers who behave like liberal elites. There are certain Remainers who look down on all Leave people. And there are certain Remainers who cannot see that people are, just because someone's patriotic does not make them a racist, just because someone is waving the British flag. So, as a Remain person, I recognise that, but I am not going to tolerate anybody pigeonholing me. I am not going to stand by and accept some of the nonsense that hard leavers come out with. I mean, during the actual campaign, David Cameron attended a question time event or a question and answer event, and this guy actually got up and called Cameron Neville Chamberlain, and he said, "We're selling out to the EU dictatorship." Now, this is something that the Leave side constantly crop up with. I find that staggering. You might not like the EU, and you might find the EU arrogant, bureaucratic, even on democratic, but to go to the point of, as this guy done, comparing it to the Third Reich. Let's be clear here. The Third Reich was one of the most murderous, hideous regimes in history, responsible for millions of deaths, responsible for starting a war, a world war for that. I mean, to leave people really think that Jean-Claude Juncker is Adolf Hitler. Do they really think that Angela Merkel is Adolf Hitler? I can understand criticism of Juncker. I sometimes think he can come across as aloof and a bit arrogant myself. But Hitler, really? That is how delusional hard levers can be. And it frustrates me because that sort of rhetoric, it pisses me off when, frankly, I see my compatriots talking about modern France and modern Germany like they are our enemies. I have news for you people. The war ended in 1945. We're not in some extended episode of Dad's Army. Okay? Drag yourselves into 2018. That mentality really frustrates me because after Brexit, we need to ensure that we have good relations with our European neighbours. And that sort of rhetoric is the last thing we need. Now, it works both ways. I don't think that the EU should be making threats, for example, about cutting off security cooperation. That is something that would be absolutely disgraceful because we're talking about life and death. We're talking about cooperation on terrorism. But, those people who are calling for a hard Brexit now, and they just want to do two fingers to the EU and be done with it, I don't think they understand how negotiations work. You cannot have a basis of a negotiation where you're just making threats and saying, well, if we don't get our way, we're just going to leave and that's it. I think that would be reckless. And I think the Prime Minister knows this. And I think people need to appreciate the position that she is in. Um, whether it be leave people who are demanding that we immediately pull out, or whether it be remain people who are demanding that she just ignores the 17 million people. Um, in terms of another referendum, I've looked at this. I don't really think it's viable, but I can understand why people are calling for it. I do take issue with this idea that um, a non-binding referendum, i.e., a referendum that was a consultation, which is what that was. This idea that there should be absolutely no other questions whatsoever. I think there's an arrogance from the Leave side. They might say that there's certain Remain people who are arrogant by not accepting the result. Okay, I would accept that, but I also think it's arrogant to say that just because they won, they're the only people allowed an opinion. There has been a growing attitude from hard leavers that, oh, your side lost, so shut up and sit in a corner, sit down and shut up. It ain't going to happen. Okay, if I'm concerned about something, I'm going to raise it. I may not understand all the issues inside out. I doubt anybody does. But this idea that anyone who voted Remain has no right to an opinion is a grotesque distortion of what democracy is. Okay, I would even say that Scottish nationalists, as much as I dislike their ideology, I would never say they've no right to an opinion. I would challenge their opinion. But the point is, there are leavers who give the impression they think that because their side won, then they're the only ones allowed to express concerns. There are legitimate concerns about the outcome of Brexit. This is permanent. This was not a general election. This is permanent. So it is absolutely natural that we ask questions about the future. It is absolutely natural that we ask how these negotiations are going, and it is absolutely natural, I think, to have a situation where you say, well, why shouldn't the final vote be down to the people regarding the deal? It's not the same as saying, let's just overturn the last result. It's not the same as saying, let's have another vote about whether we stay in or out. It would be a vote about the terms of the final agreement. I don't see what's unreasonable about that. And I would support that sort of referendum. I wouldn't support a referendum necessarily for another vote on whether we stay or leave. I think it's too late now to stay in the EU. But I would support a vote to decide the terms of the final Brexit negotiation. Why not? What have Leavers got against that? Talk about lack of democracy. What have you got against people deciding the final say? All people, yourselves included. Um, so yeah, I'm not neutral when it comes to the issues. I believe that there is a degree of denial from the Leave side that things are, they're saying the Remain side is being negative, but for years, Eurosceptic tabloids were ultra negative. And talk about negativity. The negativity I see is the constant demonization of the European Union. Like it's evil, it's responsible for all Britain's problems, and as soon as we get out, everything will be fine. Now, I know that not all Leavers think this way, but I think many do, and I find that unsettling. Anyway, I hope I've made my position clear here. Um, I'm neutral when it comes to applying fairness to behaviour. So whether it be this loudmouth yob threatening Remain demonstrators, I think he should be charged, or whether it be hard leavers, hard Remainers threatening UKIP candidates in the London local election, and actually the hustings were cancelled, which I think was wrong. They should also be charged, and it shouldn't be a case that the police ask the candidates to go away. They should be asking those aggressive demonstrators to go away and making arrests. No one should be getting into someone's face and yelling at them, because this situation is only going to get worse. After Brexit, we're going to have to live with each other. We're all British in the end of the day. We're going to have to live with each other. And I respect Leave people. I respect many of the views and concerns of the Leave side. I'm not a lover of the European Union. But I also insist that they need to accept that Remain people have a right to express concerns and views. And I'll leave it there.